Hello, everybody. Welcome into the GSMC Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today, joined by the full house. That's right, the full crew is here. We've got Jake, Nolan, Mehrob as well here with me. How are all of you guys doing today?
Right.
Doing good. All right. We've got a lot to get into, though. A weekend of action in the NBA, in the NHL. Some big news from around the world of football. Massive fights taking place this weekend as well. Some call-ups in the MLB. We'll talk about all of that. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday, June 9th. But like I was saying, we are going to start off our show here talking all about Game 2. The Thunder come back in extremely dominant fashion to take Game 2 of the NBA Finals after what was a crazy comeback in Game 1. Game 2, we see the Thunder win by 16 points, 123-107. I'll open this up for you, Mehrob. Talk to me about this game. How did they get such a strong response to what was a brutal Game 1 loss?
Well, I think the biggest thing that we saw that the Oklahoma City Thunder started to do was they started to clean up the boards. They dominated the boards on both the defensive and the offensive end, getting a bunch of offensive rebounds. Chet Holmgren had a phenomenal game. He needed to have a big time game. Isaiah Hartenstein pulling in 8 rebounds himself. And then, of course, you have the great Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who just did the dirty work on the offensive end, being an absolute force with 34 points like he always is. This game was pretty close. If you look at the stat book, it was a pretty close game. But that second quarter, at the beginning of the second quarter, the Thunder went on a 19-2 run to open up the quarter, and it was just after that, it was just lights out for the Indiana Pacers. The Pacers tried to claw back into it, but I mean, when you're giving up a 19-2 lead in the first half, it's pretty much you're already putting yourself in a tough hole to come back from.
Yeah,
Tyrese Halliburton having a quieter start to the game. He ended up finishing with 17 points, but only 3 points to finish that first half. So a little bit of a slow start for him.
yeah, no, for sure. Absolutely. It was definitely a much better game for just the Thunder in general. You saw what I think was one of the biggest differences, not just the rebounding that you mentioned, but also the changes in how effective Chet and J-Dub were specifically. You had lots of great contributions off of the bench, right? Caruso dropped 20. Aaron Wiggins, 5 from 8 from 3, dropped 18 points. Huge in those non-Shai Gilgeous-Alexander minutes. But really the big three, the other two guys stepped up huge, 15 and 19. Nolan, is this something that you can keep up here, that they can keep up? Is this how you expect the Thunder to look the rest of the way?
You can see it. I think that it's the Thunder are weird, I guess you could say, because I feel like if SGA doesn't play good, they're not winning games, and I feel like you can kind of see that. I mean, first game you saw that they were winning most of the game, but SGA was doing all the heavy lifting, and his teammates were doing nothing. If it's honestly mostly just SGA and how he can do, but through that, I think this can be kept going on. I think that this team has the Heat, not the Heat, sorry, the Thunder are a team that can catch fire, and when you catch fire, they're on fire for multiple games at a time. And during the playoffs, when it's only 7 game series, we saw that against the Grizzlies. We saw against other series as well. Granted they swept the Grizzlies. They've played great teams throughout this playoff, but every time they've won and caught fire, they've been hot each time. They haven't gone to a really deep, I guess you could say, playoff run, like not like a deep series, but this Thunder team is. I can totally see this. What can I say? This hot team staying hot. I guess you can say. I mean, they're on fire. I think Aaron Wiggins can easily drop 15 points next game. They're going to Indiana. It'll be a tougher environment, But I could totally see him having him come off the bench like he always does, scoring 10, 15 points and keeping them within the game. Whether they're up or down, he will keep them in the game. Jalen Williams, he'll be a key factor as always. He's always doing a lot. Caruso, even though he's not, the greatest scorer in the NBA, he's going to be a key factor as well. He's all like this is offense. It's going to be an off the bench battle like it has been for every playoff series. I feel like, but this is going to be really important because what bench versus bench is always important. And OKC, I think, has a better bench. And better bench guys will lead you to better wins. And I think honestly, even though it's a little off topic, I think they'll probably go into this Indiana series in Indiana and honestly take a 3-1 lead. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, the turnovers. There were a lot of issues with this Pacers team, and when you do look at the box score, like you guys were saying, it is very close. If you weren't watching this game, you'd be a little bit surprised as to how it became a 16-point game just looking at the numbers. But it felt like it was much more of a disparity. It felt like the Pacers were really struggling with that Thunder defense. They have been really sloppy both of these first two games. Even in the game that they won, you talk about a historically bad first half when it comes to turnovers, the most turnovers ever in one half of a finals basketball game. They're able to come back, but it felt like the Thunder defense has really caused fits, especially for a guy like Halliburton early on. Jake, is there a way for them to fix that, or is there something you've seen that shows that there might be light at the end of the tunnel for the Pacers to deal with this Thunder defense?
I mean, right now it looks like there is kind of no answer for that Oklahoma City defense. They've just been so dominant and so consistent, though, too, throughout this entire playoff run. You haven't really seen that defense kind of falter whatsoever. And honestly, I don't know if we're going to see that throughout the rest of this finals series. But Tyrese Halliburton, when we're talking about him, he has to do more for Indiana. That first half that he had was so quiet. He had most of his points coming in the fourth quarter of game 2. You just can't have that if you're the Pacers. You need your star to kind of do what SGA is doing for this Thunder team and almost shoulder a lot of that offensive load, especially when they're struggling against this defense. I'm not sure if it's more of they're going to have to go even more 5 out and try to just continue to spread the floor, or what's the answer here. But for sure, Tyrese Halliburton has to step up in these upcoming games, especially at home in games 3 and 4.
Yeah, and I would say honestly, Jake, when you're talking about that game 4, I mean, when you're looking at game 2, you brought up how inconsistent Tyrese Halliburton was in that first half. I would also say it felt like just the Pacers as a whole. When you had this was the Thunder team that took out a Pacers squad that went 7 guys deep for double-digit point. There were 7 Indiana Pacers guys that went over 10 plus points in this game. So this was a game where the ball was being spread out. Everybody was getting opportunities, getting bites of the apple, but it was just Tyrese Halliburton. They just don't have a leader on this team. They don't have a guy that can spearhead the offense the way that SGA does. So I think they definitely need him to be way more consistent, and hopefully he'll be able to do that when they go back to Indiana for game 3.
I do want to talk a little bit about this Tyrese Halliburton kind of conversation, because it's kind of been very wildly swung around a pendulum, at least, I mean, especially in these last 2 games, right? He comes up clutch once again. He's been incredibly clutch all playoffs long, but he comes up in that clutch moment, wins that crazy game in game 1 of the finals, and people are talking, he is the next superstar, right? He is a superstar. Is he a superstar? There's this whole conversation surrounding him. And then once he has another first 3-quarter stinker, and they don't come back and win it, the conversation around him seems to change. He, at the beginning of the playoffs, was named the most overrated player in the league. The opinion on him is changing so wildly with each game. But where do you guys find that he actually sits in this spectrum of great NBA players? Is he in that superstar tier? Where does he sit for you?
He's not, a superstar, but he doesn't deserve all the hate that he gets. He definitely didn't deserve the most overrated player in the NBA. And honestly, at this point, I would have him over Brunson as the most clutch player. He has done so much more in clutch than Brunson has. But saying that, Tyrese Halliburton is not, he's not, no superstar, but he's also not the greatest player in the NBA. I wouldn't put him up there right now with, Kevin, he's like older, Kevin Durant or Jokic or like Giannis. I wouldn't put him up there at all. But I wouldn't put him below like a top 25 player. I think he's easily a top 25 player right now, just in my opinion, based on how he's playing. If you look through a season, through his career, he doesn't show a lot of, he's not the biggest stat, he doesn't the best stats. But if you watch his game and watch how much he impacts the floor, watch how much he can kind of control, he's really more, he's a passer than more than a shooter, in my opinion. He passes it a lot more. And even when he's not getting assists, he's still finding open teammates who can find another open teammate, gets it a pass off an assist, and is able to do that. And, even though if you look at his stat sheet, he's not averaging, a double-double with 10 assists and 25 points. He's maybe getting, a triple-double here and there, and maybe a double-double with, 12 points and 11 assists, which still isn't a bad stat score to have. But, he's not putting up superstar numbers like Brunson or, Kyrie or Luka or anything like that. But he's not a bad player whatsoever. Like I said, he's not no superstar. He's not no top 10, 20 player, but he's not, just an run-of-the-mill guy. I would have him at least top 30 to top 25. I think he's good. He's not a superstar, but I would have, if I'm a fan of, I would want him on my team. I think he can do a lot for a team, whether it be offense, defense. I think he's a really valuable player to have, a really key asset on a team, like a great guard. He's just a great guard. I would totally have him on my team if I could have him. I think he's just a great overall player.
Yeah, no, he's definitely one of the more interesting players in the league. You talk about his kind of pass-first mentality, which has been kind of the reason why I think people are so volatile on him, because he's not, like you were saying, a guy that's going to go in every single night and drop 50 points, drop 30 points. He's not doing what Shea's doing, leading the league in scoring, dropping 34 and 38 in the first two games of the finals. That's not his role. He is very much a facilitator on that team. It's just a very different way of looking at it. Not that the points, not the points as the central thing, but just everything else he does on the floor. And then that combined with when he needs to be aggressive, he is aggressive. He's just a guy that I think, and to bring it back to this series as a whole, we see him really step up in the fourth quarter when he decides it's me time. It's time for me to take over. I'm going to be the offense. I'm going to get to my spot, and I'm going to take this shot, right? He went 5 for 6 in the fourth quarter in Game 2. He obviously had that huge fourth quarter performance in Game 1, but outside of that, he's been shut down in the first 3 quarters pretty thoroughly in both of these games. Nolan, what's the way that you look at for him to be more aggressive or find ways to be more successful in the first quarter? Is that a coaching thing, or is that something that he just needs to be a little more confident earlier on in the game?
I think it's a mentality thing. I think he has to just be more aggressive. You can see him throughout the game. Fourth quarter in the clutch time, he's putting up 10, 15 points. He's a really good clutch time player. But he can easily do that on a daily basis. I think he gets the ball and he has a little more confidence. You can see him. He's able to drive. You saw that in that game winner against Giannis and the Bucks in that Game 5. He's able to drive on tough when the defense is closing in, he's still able to get to the lane and make plays at the rim. He can shoot. Obviously, he's had a lot of game-winning shots, but even there, when he's shooting, I mean, it's not like he's gonna miss it. I'm not saying he's a bad shooter. It's not like he's a good shooter. He just doesn't shoot it a lot. And that is, like you said, like I said, he's a pass-first player. I think if he was able to, because he's able to get open, he's fast, he's able to create space. He can use the space to his advantage that he creates, get open, and take a shot. Because he's a good shooter. He's not a lights-out shooter, but he's good enough to where if he has the ball, I'd be like, if he shoots it, he misses it, okay, it's a good shot. Because he doesn't take bad shots. He's a very good, he takes good shots. Very hardly is he taking a shot where you see and say, I wouldn't have shot that. He's a good player who's able, and if he gets more aggressive, he can easily be putting up, bigger numbers, like a 20-point game, 25-point game, more often than what he's doing. But like I've been saying, he's a pass-first player, and he just won't happen. If he was able to get more aggressive, he would honestly put up more points and be honestly more looked at as a superstar. But the way he's playing right now is fine. I don't see a reason why he would need to, start shooting a lot more in the playoffs right now in this playoff series. Yeah, he should, but throughout the year, he hasn't really needed to. So I don't see why he would start doing that now if he hasn't needed to all year, which is, a bad spot for the Pacers to be. But he should make a change. The coach should be making a change, saying, hey, you got to start shooting more. We need you.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's a little bit on both sides, probably. But it's a very much it's a very much huge thing when you talk about how the Pacers run their offense. I thought one of the things that was not really going to show up in the box scores, but one of the reasons that I felt the Pacers looked so outmatched, even when they were trying to come back late, early in that third quarter, early in that fourth quarter, is that they just kind of lost their cool a little bit. There were lots of kind of chippy moments that I think were instigated a lot more by the Pacers. People I've heard talk about the refs a little bit in this one. I've heard people say the free throw disparity was a part of it, but it was also that the Pacers weren't playing within themselves, and they got a little bit angry at the way that things were going. They need to find a way to keep this. They need to find a way to keep their cool, or they're not going to be able to come back like they have, and that's been their superpower. How concerned about that if you are you if you were a Pacers fan, Jake, with the way that they looked, especially down the stretch of this second game?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're probably a little less concerned going into games 3 and 4, just being at home compared to being in a raucous road environment where a lot of times that's going to contribute to, your emotions, right? If you're losing, you're down 10, 15 points, and you have this crowd just getting on you, it's going to make things a lot more difficult, and it's going to make things a lot easier for these players to kind of lose their cool and just kind of lose themselves for a moment, which is what we saw a couple of times in game 2. I think, yes, it is a little bit of a concern. However, when you're going back home, hopefully some of those moments kind of die down. But on the flip side, you're going into game 3. This is now getting into really kind of crunch time of this series, and it's the NBA Finals. So it's for all the marbles. These players are going to lay it all out on the line. So could there certainly be some discipline issues? I think that is kind of a valid concern. I think it might be downplayed a little bit at home, but just with the pressure, the intensity, it's certainly something that we're going to have to keep an eye on.
Yeah, you bring up game 3 and heading into the future, and I think this is a very interesting conversation of which game was real. We had two very different game scripts, right? In game 1, we saw the Pacers do their thing. In game 2, we saw the Thunder do their own thing, where they dominated throughout. There's a lot of different ways that these series can go, but it felt like those were kind of the two sides of the coin that we might expect to get in the finals moving forward. Which one of those games do you expect? Obviously, it's not going to be a copy and paste blueprint of it, but which kind of style of game, Mehrob, do you think the rest of the finals heading to Indiana, game 3, game 4, 5 heading back to OKC, which one is it going to follow more? Are you seeing it more towards game 1 or game 2?
I honestly see it hanging around closer to game 1. I think the Thunder keep holding these leads, but I think the Pacers just keep hanging around. And I think it's going to come. Most of these games in this series are going to come down to if the Thunder can slam the door on the Indiana Pacers. We saw in game 1 they tried to, they really did, but the Pacers in the clutch are just too difficult to handle sometimes, especially when Tyrese Halliburton wakes up. If Tyrese Halliburton can have, for example, like that game 1 that we saw against the Knicks, where he had that 30-point triple-double, no turnovers, clean, consistent, all 4-quarter game. If we see that all-around package from Tyrese Halliburton, I'm giving this edge to the Pacers. But if we see more of a game 1, I think we're going to see more likely of a game 1-esque type of game moving forward in this series, more often than game 2.
One of the things that causes me just a little bit of holdback from what you said, and I think a lot of what you said could be true, but the reason why I think it goes the other way, more towards game 2, has to do with the similarities that we saw in game 1 and 2. Those two games had very different outcomes. Of course, a lot of it just had to do with the end of it when the Pacers couldn't quite come back, but in both of those games, we've seen the Pacers be way too careless with the ball. Their inability to keep what was probably their biggest strength and reason for winning a lot of these series, at least as handily as they did, is that turnover margin. They've now lost that turnover battle twice. And I know the Thunder also are particularly skilled at forcing turnovers. That's their specialty, another reason why they were so dominant making its way through the West. But it's been a real concern. I know, again, they've been able to hold off the points off turnovers to a pretty remarkable rate, but the turnovers are very concerning to me as we go into the future here. It's one of the few consistent parts that were in both Game 1 and Game 2. Jake, how do you see this series going more towards in the future? A Game 1 style or a Game 2 style?
Yeah, I think I'm honestly probably kind of leaning more towards Game 1. But I certainly agree with you that turnovers are going to play a huge role in this. Indiana needs to clean up their offense and just needs to be better in terms of decision making on that side of the ball in order to kind of have a chance in this series. But I think they're going to be able to kind of adjust. Go back home. You kind of are able to retool. You're able to split on the road, which was huge. I think you're going to be able to see Indiana kind of settle in a little bit and make this a really competitive series to where it's going to be really back and forth and it's going to be a lot of fun. But I think we're probably going to see something a little more similar to Game 1 in just the fact that it's going to be back and forth, it's going to be competitive, and Indiana is going to have a chance in this series.
One of the other things that I think is a huge part of this series is the way that both of them respond after a loss. We saw the way that OKC responded after a loss in Game 2, and they've been phenomenal at that for the entire season. You don't just win 68 games by losing a couple in a row. It only happened once or twice during the regular season. It is yet to happen to them during the playoffs. They have been just so special, and the ability to bounce back as such a young core has been so impressive to me. It's not like that hasn't been the same kind of thing with Indiana though either. And I think this Game 3, I mean, we've been talking a lot in this series about these games being must win. Game 1 was a must win for the Pacers. Game 2 kind of felt like a must win for the Thunder going back to Indiana. Nolan, is Game 3 also in that same kind of category for the Pacers where they need to keep that lead? They can't surrender the lead to the Thunder with the way that they have been proven they can come back after a loss. How big of a game is Game 3 for the Pacers and for the Thunder?
The Pacers, I think it's honestly kind of a must-win game. I really think it is. I think that the Pacers have been proven they have been outplayed in both games. They're currently tied 1-1, but they've been outplayed in both games, and they just happened in the first game to be able to come back. Last game they couldn't. I think it is a must-win. I think if they surrender the lead to OKC, like I said earlier, I think if OKC manages to win Game 3, I think they win Game 4, heading back to OKC for Game 5 with a 3-1 lead. I really think that's the truth. Thunder, I don't think it's as much of a must-win game. I think this Thunder team is well kept and well able to, even if they manage to lose, come back in Game 4 to tie it at 2-2. I think their team is just too well versed. They're too well rounded, and they have too many skilled players that if they even manage to lose another game, they can come back and respond like they just were last night. They were able to, they lost that Game 1 off a buzzer beater. Horrible loss for them. Buzzer beaters happen. They were able to come back out last night in OKC in their home court and just play better basketball. 19-2 run, winning by 16. I mean, they were pretty dominant most of the game. There was a few close instances where Indiana was coming back, making it look like they were, but OKC would just, kind of just pull away. They would just keep pulling away when things get close, and they kept the distance. They were able to secure the win after then that brutal Game 1 game winner. So that's why I'm thinking if OKC manages to lose, not that big a deal for them. They have the skill, they have the ability to come back and win Game 4. It's a must-win game for Indiana. If they lose, I think OKC has the momentum, win Game 4, 3-1 lead going back to OKC for Game 5.
Yeah, for sure. Honestly, I can't agree more. I personally think the Pacers are going to win this series. I picked them before the series started, and I'm still rolling with them. I expected the Thunder to win Game 2. They needed to come out and make a statement. If they went down 2-0 on their home floor, this series is pretty much a done deal. This is the NBA Finals. These are two young teams that are just experienced the NBA Finals for the first time. Going up against, you give Rick Carlisle a 2-0 lead, you're just most likely not coming back. So I expected the Thunder to win last night. But I think Tyrese Halliburton is due for a big game. He really is. We saw game 1, he struggled big time until the fourth quarter. Same story in game 2. Obviously, much less clutch moments, but still 5 or 6 in the fourth quarter. Tyrese Halliburton needs to have a big game. And if the Pacers come out with the same energy as they did in game 2, spreading the basketball around, having 7 guys in double figures, and Tyrese Halliburton can take that lead role and take initiative, I think they'll be okay. They really need to be more careful with the ball, less careless with the passes, like Jeremy said, and die down some of the turnovers because they're doing everything else well. But when you turn the ball over at that rate, it's tough to win games, especially in the NBA Finals.
Yeah, you talk about Tyrese Halliburton being due. He kind of is that X factor for the Pacers, at least, to win Game 3, in my opinion. Jake, just wrapping up our segment here, who's that X factor in Game 3 for the Thunder to keep their foot on the gas and take a commanding 2-1 lead in this series?
I think it's honestly Jalen Williams. You saw him step up in Game 2 after kind of struggling in Game 1, being super inefficient. I think you need to see him step up again in Game 3, kind of be that secondary option, take some of that pressure off of SGA, and just be that terror on the wing that can kind of terrorize the Pacers defense, give somebody else the opportunity to score in that Oklahoma City offense. I think Jalen Williams needs to have a really great Game 3 in order for the Thunder to be successful.
For sure. He's definitely going to play a huge role in Game 3. Game 3, just a couple nights away, a massive game. We'll make sure to preview that when it is game day. But we do have a lot more to get into. Massive news out of college sports. The House settlement has officially been approved by a judge. This is going to affect everything you can possibly think of in sports. It's basically creating a brand new sports league, professional sports league. We'll talk about all of the far-reaching consequences, if this is good or bad for the sport, and much more, coming up next here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today, joined by the full house. I've got Jake, Mehrob, and Nolan here. If you're just tuning in, we just finished going over everything you need to know about the NBA Finals. Game 1, Game 2, what we expect for the future in Game 3, 4, as it switches over to Indiana. In this segment, we turn our attention to maybe the biggest single piece of news that has come out of sports in the last 10 years. The House versus NCAA settlement has officially been approved. This is something that's been in the works for about a year at this point. The final terms are out there now, and it is going to completely overhaul how everything collegiate sports looks like, not just for football, where a lot of this money is going, but for the Olympic sports as well. First thing that we're just going to break right into, no lowering ourselves into this, we're just going to dive straight head in. Is this even a good thing? Because this is a very far-reaching change in college sports, Jake. This is something that not only allows players to be paid, but allows schools to directly pay their players. Is this a good thing or not?
Honestly, I think it is a good thing. I mean, this has been an issue for how many years now have we seen this? Um, this has been something I think has been an issue longer than I've been alive. The issue of amateurism, of college athletes being paid. Now, finally, there hopefully can be some kind of transparency here with universities directly paying their student athletes. There's going to be a lot less emphasis on these third-party collectives. It sounds like a lot of these third-party NIL deals are going to be a little bit more supervised as well. I think it's just a good move, trying to streamline this process. Since NIL kind of legislation has been introduced 3 or 4 years ago, we've seen the entire landscape of college athletics switch on a dime, completely turn. And this is something that has been needed. There's been needed some kind of legislation, some kind of directive to govern the NCAA and these NIL laws. I think it's a good move to try to rein in some of this NIL kind of landscape issues. And it makes a lot of sense. It's a good thing for these student athletes. They're going to be able to benefit off of their own name, image, and likeness. And it's just a good thing overall, I think, for the exposure of some college athletics. Yes, there are some downsides, which I'm sure we'll get into later, but I think overall, it's a good thing.
I agree. I mean, the only bad thing about it, actually, there's really nothing bad about it. I mean, the players are getting paid. I believe the amount was like $20 million per school, so the players are able to get a good amount of money. And the only big problem I see with this is now that schools like Stanford's already started it. They started getting GMs. I mean, Andrew Luck is basically already a general manager of Stanford. He's organizing. He's controlling the market. He's controlling the school's athletics. And that's the only problem I kind of see with this. I don't think schools and the colleges should not be having guys control their players and control their money. I just think that's something that I don't really agree with. But I do like the money feature. These guys are, college athletes. These guys are big name players. They've been making money forever. College athletes have, let's be honest. But now it's just illegal. No, it is legal, sorry. And now they can be able to get their money, which is good for them. The only thing I want to see change, which probably never will though, with college football, is just kind of the transfer portal. I feel like this could also have a big implement on the transfer portal, however that works. But overall, this is a good thing for the guys. Making money is good. No one's gonna ever say no to making money. And this is a good thing for these guys, kind of learn how to maybe start, this is going to be helpful to some guys, kind of learn how to invest, how to embrace the future, how to get ready for the future, and how they can, make money off this, use it for good. I think it's a good thing, some downsides, but overall, it's pretty good.
I think one of the more interesting aspects of this, at least when you get into the big breakdown picture, is the difference between the concept of name, image, likeness and what this means for colleges as a whole. Because name, image, likeness is something that I fully support, right? And this is where I'm going to start to split with what you guys have said thus far. I think name, image, likeness is amazing. I don't think there is any world where anybody should be not allowed to make money off themselves. If tomorrow morning somebody sent me an email and said, I want to give you $50,000 for doing the GSMC Sports Podcast, or if Mehrob or Jake or Nolan got any of that same kind of offer, there's no reason why it should be against guidelines to do it. You should be allowed to make an appearance, do a commercial, stuff like that. Where I kind of draw the line, and I think where this kind of pushes the boundaries just a little bit for me, is the fact that the schools now are directly paying the athletes. And the main reason that it irks me a little bit the wrong way is because this is a public institution, right? To get away from the football field for a second, to get away from the basketball court or wherever you're playing these sports at, one of the biggest differences between NIL and what this House settlement is going to do is it's going to allow publicly funded universities all around the country to now work with and we've already seen it, private equity firms that might be able to take control of a university that's not just for athletics, but also teaches 60,000 other kids a whole bunch of other things, right? It's important that I think there's some kind of distinction, and I'm really worried that these, especially public universities, are starting to go into more of, we're a franchise and we're going to make money off of this, as opposed to being that public university. It's a very interesting line. Mehrob, what are your thoughts on that kind of distinction there?
For sure. For like a kid that just graduated college too, that this is NIL is brand new to the college sports. It already kind of felt like student athletes were starting to get paid in a way. College was starting to become more. It started feeling more than college was when NIL was introduced 2 years ago. Now that this new switch up, now that I'm just listening to what you were talking about, I completely understand what you're talking about. I can 100% see that distinction. Honestly, the fact that athletes are starting to get paid in that way is a little bit of an issue, but at the same time, they are still considered. We don't call them just straight athletes. We call them student athletes for a reason. You always keep that first part in there next to athletes, because that's the reason why you're going to college. You're there to be a student. If you're not doing well academically, you're not going to be able to reach the field to play in your athletic sport. The one thing though that me and Jake kind of talked about over the weekend when this news came out is that this cap is now going to be spread across all athletics. And it's not just one. It's not just college football. It's not just college basketball. This is across all sports that these colleges hold. And is there going to be a little bit of an issue with how colleges are they going to sometimes dial into one specific sport, especially if you're a small school, dial into one specific sport that they're necessarily good at? For example, say like a UMass, I'm just going to say UMass because I went to UMass as a smaller school. UMass women's soccer, they dial in $5 to $10 million into women's soccer, but they only dial in $5 million to the men's soccer team or something along those lines. This is something that I think could be a little bit of an issue, and I'm kind of wondering how they're going to attack that if it becomes somewhat of a problem.
Yeah, that one I think is really interesting, because what you bring up, I think also goes to an even bigger point that could have some more concerns there. We're talking about generally, it's expected that most schools are going to do 75% to football, 15% to men's basketball, 5% to women's basketball, and then 5% split amongst everything else, is the numbers that I've been seeing of that 20.5 million. The other thing is that's also going to go up by a minimum of 4% every single year for the next 10 years. So at a minimum, we're looking at $30 million that schools can pay out in 2035. That's...
How are they even going to raise $20.5 million, or when it keeps raising every single year? You think of a MAC program, you think of a Sunbelt school, you think of a Conference USA type school that, maybe they don't have $20.5 million to give to their athletes. So is that going to have ramifications across the entire university? Or are athletic programs going to be cut? Are academic programs going to be cut? All trying to keep pace. I think that's kind of another aspect here of a potential downside, is with some of these smaller schools where maybe finances are much tighter, how are you going to even be able to raise this much money to pay your athlete?
It's definitely a concern there, and that kind of goes into a little bit more of Title IX stuff as well. I know that they came out and they said that NIL is not a part of Title IX, but this is the whole reason we see a lot of Olympic sports get cut is because of that Title IX factor, right? You need to pay the same amount of money into men's sports that you do into women's sports. And people and schools with a football program, especially if they go ahead and they fund that football program, have cut other men's sports or added a bunch of women's sports so they can keep that funding equal. And it hurts a lot of these, especially Olympic style athletes. And you're right, it could also cut into the rest of the school budget, everything that's going on over there with the academic side of things. There's a lot of things we don't know about how it's going to happen. It's governed, the new governing body is the College Sports Commission, who CEO is going to be Brian Seeley, who was a former MLB executive, so he has a little bit of experience there. Is the NCAA just obsolete now? What's the point of having this NCAA organization when you have the College Sports Commission as well? What's the split of responsibilities there?
It does feel like there really is no point for the NCAA anymore. I mean, when's the last time the NCAA really doled out a legitimate punishment that we were like, okay, that's a pretty good one? I mean, you look at what happened with Michigan in 2023. That's still not resolved, but I mean, those guys really got a slap on the wrist for arguably cheating throughout that entire season. That's up for debate. But, there's the NCAA for years really hasn't had kind of any authority. And with the new creation of this College Sports Commission, do you all see the NCAA really kind of maintaining its position at all in college athletics?
No, I really don't. I think NCAA has been they really haven't, I'm going to be honest, I think anything they've done for the past 10 to 15 years has just been really bad. They really haven't done anything good for any sport. I feel like they're always just trying to do something, make something big happen, and it always just backfires. Last year, I mean, you can make an example, the 12-team playoff. I thought it was fine. I thought the idea was cool, but how certain teams got in, that was pretty poor. It was a lot of blowouts in the first round. March Madness, they're looking to add more teams now, which I think is absolutely absurd. I think that should not even happen. The Michigan scandal, a lot of team scandals, players, coaches doing absurd stuff, or like even back then when a coach would get caught for like paying players to go visit or like paying them on the payroll to play there was still no punishment. There maybe be a few game suspension. Coach can't coach for, let's say, the first 3 games of the season, when realistically those first 3 games don't matter. Those are warm-up games. Those are, games where you're used to, basically get free wins. I mean, the NCAA is just so soft. They haven't done it, in my opinion, they haven't done really anything good rule-wise or punishment-wise for the past 10, 15 years. And I think the NCAA in the next few years is going to fizzle out, and this new commission will take the charge, and I think they can honestly, hopefully, run it a lot better so we can actually start seeing legit punishments or, just legit good stuff come into college football or college sports in general.
As bad as the NCAA is, right? And I think we can all agree that the NCAA, not a great organization, just in general. This College Sports Commission, it comes with its own issues, right? It feels a lot more professional centric. And that kind of goes back to my main issue with this bill. Not that athletes are getting paid, but the fact that we're privatizing and making it more of a professional sport rather than it being college athletics at a college. It's going to be its own league. I think the NCAA does a really good job of protecting its Olympic sports specifically, right? That's not bringing in money. Swimming and diving isn't bringing in money. It's not happening. So when you take a look at what the NCAA does do that's valuable, it's not like the big football, basketball stuff, because they're admittedly very bad at dealing with stuff like that, responding at a even rational level, too far or not enough all the time. I'm a little worried about how this new commission is going to handle a lot of its non-revenue money making, not non-revenue sports. That's my big concern here.
I think what we're going to see, honestly, probably is the College Sports Commission take over football, and then the NCAA take over everything else. Maybe men's basketball kind of breaks off too and forms their own thing. But besides that, I think the NCAA is still going to be around, right? Because of what you said, they do a great job of protecting those Olympic sports. The swimming, track and field, stuff of that nature. They do a great job of organizing that, governing those sports. So I think that's probably what we're going to see. I think we see football break away, and this kind of seems like it's almost the first step of that process of college football breaking away from the rest of college athletics.
Yeah, no, definitely. Because this is something that, while this is the first tangible step they've taken, if you listen to what the Big Ten and the SEC have done specifically, it's all been leading up to this kind of turning point, right? Greg Sankey and the commissioner of the Big Ten, they've gotten together. They've made kind of a coalition, and in 2 years, it went from a Power 5 now to a Power 2.5 kind of situation, with the ACC and the Big 12 kind of only really getting half a vote with the other two conferences there. And it all kind of ties back to TV contracts and everything going up in 2031. I don't know if this is kind of the other concern I have with it is I don't know if this is a puppet government until they can continue to find a way to break free and build a super league kind of thing that's been so heavily rumored around college football. Mehrob, what is that something you see in happening in the future, or is this just one of those crazy conspiracy theories for nutheads like me?
No, it's not. And the way you just described it, the way both you and Jake just described it, it makes sense. You put all the pieces together, you look at it from a big picture standpoint, everything that they have done and they're continuing to do right now is building up to this point. And we may see it in the next year, we may see it in the next 2 years. But I would not be shocked if we saw the College Football Commission, come out and separate from the NCAA. Because of just how big college football is. You bring up how big the SEC is. You bring up how big the Big Ten is. We've already heard some rumors about super conferences coming out with the Big 12 Big 12 and ACC merging with the other two big conferences to make some sort of two conferences the same way that the NHL has, the NBA has, continuing to make it seem like a professional sport. So when you put all these pieces together, you make a stew out of all these factors. It looks like all these factors are leading. Everything's pointing towards the college football wants to move away from the NCAA.
Yeah, and two, I think with the College Sports Commission, one interesting facet of it is that every school that's going to join the College Sports Commission, they're going to have to sign this kind of affirming document that basically locks them in to the organizing, overarching body of the College Sports Commission. So when you kind of factor that in, it almost kind of seems like that's the first step in some sort of agreement outside of the NCAA for college football. And especially, it sounded like it was kind of those Power 4 conference teams, about 68 to 70 of them. So when you kind of have to sign a document already, kind of seems like it might lead towards something else down the line, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. We've talked a lot of bad about this, and that's on me. That's my worries and fears of the future, my old man brain kicking in. But there's plenty of positives too, right? One of my favorite things about this being settled is the fact that there's going to be some kind of regulation on NIL. Before, it felt like under the table millions of dollars being sent over to these players just so, an SMU that has a lot of big donors can turn around like that, and it leaves a lot of other schools in the dust, which again, sometimes that's just kind of how college football has always worked, but it's a little more in the light. What they are going to do now is it has to go through a portal, which is going to help make NIL a lot more fair, and you won't just have these bajillionaires being able to hand out millions of dollars to these kids under the table, kind of like an arbitration system like they do in baseball a little bit, is the way that I've understood it when they're reading it with computer models and stuff. But that's one of my favorite things, because this was the Wild West, and it led to a lot of, it felt like cheating going on, but the schools were just like, we don't know the rules, so we're just going to do whatever we want right now. Hopefully this brings a little bit of structure, which is something that a lot of the commissioners talked about. Structure. All four of the big four commissioners talked about how this is going to help build a future for college football, for college sports in general, bring a structure to everything. That's one of the key words that they have, and I do think they're right about that. There's plenty of good that came from this as well, especially with the regulation of NIL.
Oh, completely. I mean, you look at Texas Tech this year spent $15 to $20 million on transfers. You look at Miami, just gave Jackson Cantwell, the number one offensive tackle in the country, $2.5 million per year to be the left tackle at Miami. We're not going to see that anymore. it sounds like a lot of those kind of deals are not going to be approved through this new system, which I really like. I think it kind of evens the playing field a little bit. And we're not going to see kind of this overvaluation of certain athletes where you're paying $1 million for a guy that's just not worth it.
One of the things, question here from Anthony, and we kind of brought it up a little bit. We didn't quite get there. Anthony on YouTube asks, with this settlement, is it actually possible that this is going to speed up the potential merger between the Big 12 and the ACC in order to save both of their conferences looking towards the future? Or is this something that you think they had already planned for?
I think
I'm going to let you go.
Ooh, you want me to? Yeah, I'll go first. I mean, I think this could definitely speed it up. I think, these teams now being able to kind of just spend, or these universities, colleges, being able to just spend this $20 million or however much they get is going to help teams maybe grow and maybe not grow. I mean, maybe some teams will know how to spend it, some teams won't, and some things could happen. Let's say some team in Big 12 is, the Big 12 is really good and the ACC is not. Maybe they're going to maybe want to merge quicker so they can maybe become a power conference, and then Big 10 versus the SEC, they merge and start playing each other. Who knows? But, I mean, I think it'll make it go faster for sure. I don't think they planned it out this way, but I think, with this going through, I think with the schools not being able to pay their players, I think this can definitely help build up or make it go faster. I think they can definitely make this merge go a lot faster. And, we could honestly end up seeing these two conferences coming honestly maybe as soon as the next 10 years. I think it's definitely possible now with this new contract, this new extension, this new thing being signed. I mean, it could definitely speed it up, I think. Honestly.
Yeah, the only thing that gives me pause, I think, a little bit is just the idea of an impending Super League, right? If we're going to see that in the next 4 to 5 years, kind of sounds like 2030, 2031 may be a big turning point when TV contracts kind of end up. If we're going to see maybe a potential Super League, could these two conferences kind of wait and just wait on that Super League as opposed to merging, if they merge in the next 2 years and then they only have a couple years before they have to merge into something else? Could that just kind of make the time frame a little too cramped? And maybe they just wait out on a Super League type scenario. I think that's also very possible, where it's maybe a wait and see kind of thing, especially when we look at the college football playoff and how we still don't know how that's going to be formatted, which is also going to be a huge part of the conversation.
Yeah, the college football playoffs, the way that the contract's up there, you're absolutely right. This is going to be a huge part of whether or not this experiment works in the short term or in the long term. But there is a lot to break down when it comes to the House settlement. We're going to break down a little bit more specific in the coming days and weeks, because it is just, again, one of the biggest single pieces of news that has broken in the last 10 years. It's completely changing the sport, creating new ones. But we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we take a look at what's going on in the NFL. A couple new faces in new places. A couple people have been cut from teams. Where might they land? We'll talk about that and much more coming up next here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC. to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you were just tuning in, we just finished going over one of the biggest single pieces of news in the history of sports, the House versus NCAA settlement, completely changing the way that we look at college sports. In this segment, we take a look at the pros, college, professional football, the NFL, to be specific. We're going to take a look at some of the peak pieces of news that broke today. Nick Chubb signs with the Texans. You have Jair Alexander released. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful June 9th, Monday. All over the place here right now. But like we were saying, some big news in the NFL. We're going to start off with the Nick Chubb piece of news because he's a very interesting case. He decides to sign with the Houston Texans, a team that already has a running back in Joe Mixon. How do you guys see this fit going? I'll start with you, Jake, on this one. How do you see this fit going down in Houston?
Well, first of all, let me just say I am heartbroken that Nick Chubb is no longer a Cleveland Brown. But I love this signing from Houston's perspective. You pair Nick Chubb up with Joe Mixon, a guy that really had a great first year there, pairing him up with CJ Stroud in the backfield and giving the Texans kind of an actual rushing attack, something that they hadn't had previously. I think when you pair Joe Mixon with Nick Chubb's downhill running ability, yes, Chubb still coming off that injury. Yeah, he played a couple games last season, but he didn't look the same. He was just not the same guy. He was not fully recovered. But you get to this offseason, he's squatting 600 pounds again, squatting 2 grown male adults, which is insane. But this guy, I mean, at his peak, one of the best running backs in the NFL. I think he was the best pure runner in the NFL. A guy that never really seems to get negative yards, legs always churning, and a much more complete and well-rounded running back than people give him credit for. Yes, his physical downhill kind of style of running is what gives him his name, his popularity. But this is a guy that can catch passes out of the backfield, can block in certain situations, and just gives the Texans another really great option to kind of pair with Joe Mixon, who in his own right is a really elite running back. That just gives them a great 1-2 punch, arguably one of the top duos in the NFL, I think, if Nick Chubb is fully healthy, which obviously is a question mark here.
Yeah, the health of Nick Chubb, definitely a big question mark. The other one, and I see what you're saying with that kind of as a deadly duo, the fit with these two guys. It's going to be a 50-50, you think? Is it going to be where Nick Chubb is a third down back? And if he is a third down back, which is kind of the way that I see it happening, does Nick Chubb's game need to change to be a successful third down back in Houston?
No, I don't think so. He was already, you put him in Cleveland, he was in Cleveland, his great time there, and you put him in third down, you're guaranteed a first down. I mean, he was always just that good of a running back. He was, like I said, when you're squatting 550 to 600 pounds, I mean, you're going to get through any O-line that can help you. You're going to get through any D-line that's coming at you. You find Nick Chubb, you find the Browns down in the quick 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, you're throwing Nick Chubb in there for a power dive, just for a quick dive play, and he's getting that first down. He's always been a power back runner, and he's always been able to get yards after contact as well. He's just a great pure runner. And I think even with him, even if he is, just a third down back, he's going to give the Houston Texans a great running game. That Joe Mixon, like I said, already a great running back. He was a phenomenal first year there, had a great first year there. And then, with adding Nick Chubb, even though, the injury, he is kind of not look the same. But I think that through recovery, this offseason is going to be huge for him. I think it's going to be a really big offseason to kind of prove that he still has it. Because I think he still does. I think even if he stayed in Cleveland, even if he had minimal role, let's say he was like a backup running back, I think he still would have been great. He was a great running back before his first injury, and I think he still has potential to be a great running back. He always has been. I think he always will be. And even if he manages to just become a third down back, I think he still will be great in Houston. And I think he can be a great asset to that team, whether it be running, catching, blocking, whatever. He can do it all. I think the signing was great. Quick 1-year deal, $2.5 million, nothing crazy. And I think he could honestly, hopefully, get re-signed again. I think he's a great player.
One of the things that,
in terms of style wise, he's obviously a power back, gonna have to probably shift just a little bit of how he runs the ball. Going to a more spread out offense in Houston, if he does take over that third down role, he's going to have to work on his hands. He's going to have to work on his pass blocking. He's probably going to use a little bit more of his elusiveness rather than his power. So yes, I do think he's going to have to adjust his game a little bit, but I think this guy's just that good that he's going to be able to do it though.
one of the more interesting combos in the NFL. I kind of agree with what Anthony said in the comments here. He said it's going to be odd because both him and Joe Mixon are very similar running backs, where they're more to be they're more likely to be these bell cow backs that break you down over the course of the game. If you go back to 2022 with Nick Chubb, for instance, he had 4.8 yards per carry in attempts 1 through 10. When you go look at attempts 11 through 20, it goes up more than a full yard, 5.9 yards per carry on that. He wears this defense down, and sure, a little bit has to do with the situation, but if you just go first half, second half, it's 4.9 in the first half, 5.3 in the second half here. It's one of these things that, kind of like a Derrick Henry, the more you have to tackle Nick Chubb, the harder it's going to be to tackle Nick Chubb, the harder it's going to be to tackle Joe Mixon, and it feels like Joe Mixon is going to be that lead back, so it concerns me just a little bit when we look at the fit with Houston. I love Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb is one of my favorite running backs. I've got his jersey on the wall behind me, right? But it just feels like a little bit of an odd fit to me. Mehrob, what are your thoughts on this fit in Houston?
Yeah, so I think I want to say a couple things. First, I think the Houston Texans are gonna utilize Nick Chubb in a similar way that the Atlanta Falcons use a Tyler Algier, especially on the goal line for those power back drives to get those easy touchdowns from the 1 yard line, 2 yard line, 3 yard line, 3rd and 3s. I think he's gonna end up being that third down back. I don't see him splitting off with the first down back. I don't think he's going to get any first down snaps just because I think Joe Mixon's so much better at running through the tackles. And on top of that, it would just minimize his possibilities of getting injured. And what I mean, Nick Chubb. The second thing I want to say, the Houston Texans might be the only team outside the Philadelphia Eagles to still be able to do the tush push. Seriously, flat out. You have a guy, Nick Chubb, that's able to squat 500, 600 pounds. You have a guy like C.J. Stroud, who's a big dude in his own right. Like there's a lot of guys. The offensive line may be a little bit more of a question mark in Houston than it is in Philadelphia, but just with the personnel alone, they'll be able to do it with Nick Chubb now. I would not be shocked if we saw that play get drawn up a couple times by the Houston Texans this year.
Just let Nick Chubb take the tush push snaps. Come on. Put him under center. You're saying the guy can squat 600 pounds. Why not? He's already running back 2 now at Houston.
I agree. I think that's the perfect role for him, actually. I don't know why more teams don't do this. Do the tush push with like a tight end.
Right? Or Derrick Henry doing the tush push, like...
Oh.
Or like give Kyle Pitts the ball in Atlanta, put him under center. I feel like there's guys that
He'd be getting more usage. He'd be getting more usage there than he is right now under center.
honestly, that's so valid.
Now Nick Chubb, low-key should be disrespectful. I mean, he squats the same amount as Jalen Hurts, and look what they're doing. They got this relatively. I think the O-line could be a little better for the Browns, but I mean, you look at that O-line. I mean, they're kind of similar. Browns definitely not as good as the Eagles, but Browns isn't horrible. I'd say they're I think they're a top 5 O-line, me personally. But they can work. They can use it. They can use Nick Chubb or not the Browns, or the Texans now. Not as good of an O-line, so it could be a little struggle, but they could definitely try it out. Chubb, why not?
Yeah, I was gonna say that Texans offensive line definitely makes it a little bit tougher to be a heavy run team. They moved off of Larry Tunsil too, and that one's gonna sting. I didn't like that they didn't address the offensive line too much, and that also might hurt Nick Chubb and Joe Mixon. I could see it going where it's a little bit of a whoever's the hot hand kind of thing, because I mean it's not really going to be a set in stone rotational back kind of thing, or like a you get one drive, I get one drive kind of thing, like they did up in Detroit with Gibbs and Montgomery. They're very different. They're very different, these two. So it's just going to be an interesting fit, and I'm not super sold on how well it's really going to go. But outside of that, the other big piece of news from today, Jair Alexander. We kind of touched on him a little bit a couple days ago, looking for a trade out of Green Bay, officially cut. They couldn't find a partner. The all-pro corner, 2-time all-pro corner who's been hurt the last couple of years, is officially back on the market. What are a couple of places that you guys are looking at as landing spots for Jair Alexander, and what kind of role do you think he'll play?
Why not the Eagles? The rich get richer. Jair Alexander, a guy that was born in Philly. Yes, you have Quinyon Mitchell. You have Cooper DeJean. But they have cap space, and you can always use another cornerback. This is a team that they pretty much have every piece. Yes, you have a couple solid cornerbacks, but they're young guys. When you have Super Bowl aspirations and you can go get a veteran that can contribute to your team, I think it makes a lot of sense for Philly. I wouldn't be surprised for them to try to reach out.
I'd like to see him. I know it won't happen, but I'm a Lions fan. I'm also partly a Browns fan, so honestly, could like to see him on the Browns. That'd be really good. I think that'd be a really good secondary. I think it would. You got Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome, you get Grant Delpit, and then you add him. You add Jair Alexander. I mean, that could be a really good. That'd be a really good secondary. I don't think it'll happen, but really cool.
Another option too. What about Baltimore? Baltimore doesn't have a whole lot in their secondary. Kind of a similar situation with Philly, where they're a team that we're pretty much expecting them to be Super Bowl contenders. You add a guy in Jair Alexander to lock down one of those cornerback spots. That's a really scary Ravens defense.
Oh, for sure. Very scary Ravens defense. I think one of the more obvious ones as well that's out there is the Buffalo Bills. You want to talk about going to a Super Bowl contender, going to a place where, doesn't hurt to ring chase a little bit, and that wouldn't be the biggest ring chasey move either. But you go to the Bills where they desperately need a corner. He can come in, probably could be cornerback 1 over there, continue to play that big role, which I'm sure he would love to have with on top of a little bit of a payday. That's the one that I think is the best fit. Outside of that, the Rams have been in the market for a corner for a long time. The Ravens you brought up. The Vikings, if he wanted to stay in division, get a little bit of revenge, play with Justin Jefferson instead of against him. And a team like the Commanders are always interesting to me. I know they've got Marshawn Lattimore on one end, and you don't necessarily want to trot out double older corners, but it's something that they definitely could have used last season. And with them building up a defense a little bit, these are a couple places that I think could really use the services of a guy like Jair.
I also think the Lions could definitely be in the mix, Jeremy. It would be another one of those interdivision switch up or trades, but I mean, the Lions already lost. They need a guy in their back line like a cornerback. They already have Aiden Hutchinson on the front line to anchor that defensive line, but they don't have a veteran presence in the back line in the secondary. I think Alexander would be a fantastic fit in Detroit personally, and he would fit with Matt Campbell really well, I think, personality-wise.
Yeah,
Like that.
Anthony in the comments asks a little bit about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers could also use a corner. There's a lot of corner-needy teams. What do you guys think of his fit over there?
Yeah,
I mean- Sorry, go ahead. Somebody, whoever's got it.
Mehrob, you got it.
All right. When we're looking at Tampa Bay, I mean, I think he would absolutely fit there. You don't really have a whole lot of. You lose Devin White. You lose a bunch of great pieces over there in the secondary. I think he would fit fantastically in Tampa Bay. I think this is the same thing a bunch of us would say, but I'll throw it over.
Talk about a team that desperately needs corner. Right now, CB1, we're looking at Jamel Dean. Maybe we're looking at Zion McCollum, one of these two guys that McCollum, I think, has a lot of upside, but definitely a guy that will get burned a lot going for that big play. You get a guy that can come in and play a little bit of zone, a little bit of man in Jair Alexander, one of the best overall corners in the game. That would do wonders for them, especially in a division like that really is up for grabs. Corners always a much needed position around the league. There are plenty of good landing spots for him, but I think it kind of has to check off the box. I don't see him going to a cornerback needy team like the Giants or something. He's not going to a team to lose or to be not that great. Coming from the Packers, he's probably looking for an upgrade, which good news for him. There are plenty of places to go if he's looking for something like that.
San Francisco, too, potentially. Losing Charvarius Ward, you have pretty much $50 million in cap space this year until that Brock Purdy extension kicks in eventually. But this year right now, for 25, they have a bunch of cap space. Could they go and sign Jair Alexander on a one-year deal as kind of a Band-Aid for one of those cornerback spots on a roster where you're obviously still in contention?
I think, honestly, I know they were talking about getting Jalen Ramsey back, but I think the Rams could be a really good spot for him to go too. I think the Rams, they're building, their offense over there is obviously, it's good. They just got Devontae Adams, they have Puka, and they have Stafford. I think their offense is fine, but their defense, it's not horrible, but adding a guy like Jair over there, adding him with, their secondary, it's not horrible. It's not, the best in the NFL, but I mean, the Rams are looking to go for Jalen Ramsey. They want to go get him back. I think they could honestly probably get Jair for cheaper, and I still think he probably is a little better than what he's able to get. What the Rams are able to get from Jair compared to Ramsey, I think he's probably cheaper, and I think he's still better. So I think that wouldn't be a horrible landing spot for him. If not, maybe no. Every team realistically needs a corner, but I think if he wants to go to a winning team, I mean, honestly, the Bills, because, he's loose to the cold, that'd be a good spot. He'd be cornerback one, most likely. I think the Rams would be a good fit for him, too, though, just because, I think the Rams need a cornerback, and he'd be already on a good heavy offensive side of the ball. The offense is good, and the defense isn't horrible, so he could probably fit in there pretty well, too.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of good landing spots for him. I think the Bills are where, if I had to pick one, was where he ends up. Rams probably second on that list. But it's not just Nick Chubb, Jair Alexander, lots of other news, holdouts specifically when it comes to those training camp updates. That's coming up next after this break on the GSMC Sports Podcast. Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today joined full house with the boys, Nolan, Jake, and Mehrob, all here with us. If you're just tuning in, we've talked a lot about the NBA Finals. We went over a lot of the House versus the NCAA settlement that took place last weekend. We've talked a little bit about the NFL offseason. Nick Chubb has a new home, but that's not the only big piece of news. We've been tracking a lot of holdouts when it comes to things around training camp. We're going to talk about some of those big ones, but before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday, June 9th. But like I was saying, we're going to get into these teams, or these players in specific, that are still holding out. And we're going to start off in Cincinnati. So I think the Cincinnati Bengals have a very interesting mindset right now. Of course, the big one is Trey Hendrickson. Trey Hendrickson still not signed or traded away, but you also have guys like Shamar Stewart, who still have yet to show up to camp as he's still negotiating his rookie contract. They cut Jermaine Pratt today as well, who is top 10 in tackles as a linebacker position for a team that needs some help defensively. What's going on right now in Cincinnati?
It's baffling to me, honestly. I mean, their entire offseason. So you have Jamar Chase, you have Joe Burrow, obviously extended. Then you choose to spend $30 million on not your defensive end who has 35 total sacks over the past 2 seasons, but on another wide receiver, on your number 2 wide receiver, on a team where they really struggled on defense last year with these guys, with Trey Hendrickson, with Jermaine Pratt. Then you release Jermaine Pratt, who's been one of your leading tacklers over the past couple seasons. Shamar Stewart, too. Shamar Stewart, I don't know why you are trying to negotiate your rookie deal. You had 4.5 sacks in your college career. Just sign your rookie deal. You were still a first-round pick in the NFL, man. I mean, I don't even know what he's trying to negotiate there at that point. But Trey Hendrickson, no. This guy, he's got a legitimate gripe against the Bengals front office. When you look at his production, been one of the top 2 or 3 defensive ends in the NFL the past couple of seasons, and yet still getting paid like a middle tier defensive end. He deserves his money, and I don't blame Trey Hendrickson right now for kind of holding out. It's just kind of curious that the Bengals decided to invest so much in their offense and really not reward their top defensive star.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely a little bit concerning. Trey Hendrickson has been a situation for a long time. Rookie deals, there's always guaranteed money, that especially in the first round they try and negotiate, but this is the Cincinnati Bengals. You're going to get what you're going to get out of them. I kind of respect the move, standing on business trying to get your money there, but it's not. It's got to end at some point over there with Cincinnati. But you're right, it's just baffling to me. Moving off of Jermaine Pratt as well, who was, again, top 10 in the entire NFL in tackles, which can be a bit of a misleading stat. But still, he was a guy that was always around the ball, and he wasn't really too expensive either. It saves him less than $10 million against the cap this season. And unless they're going to turn around and do something special with that extra $5 million or so, it just doesn't make sense to me for them to move off of a guy like Pratt, especially with the situation they're in.
100%. I can't agree more. This is what happens, though, when you see a team, a smaller market team like the Cincinnati Bengals, go all in on their offense. Jake, you brought up T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. A lot of people said that the Bengals needed to split up one of these 2 guys before they signed T. Higgins to that extension. They need to either keep Jamar Chase or let go T. Higgins, or one of those, vice versa. In the end, they decided to sign them both. You have Joe Burrow on the books as well on a big contract. There's not a whole lot of money left on the table to give to a guy like a Trey Hendrickson, like a Jermaine Pratt. Jermaine Pratt, one of the best big tackles in the league right now. Trey Hendrickson, sneaky defensive end, has been one of the best, was one of the best this past season. It's unfortunate, but I don't know what else you can really say other than it felt like you could see this from a mile away. The smoke was in the air. The Bengals just turned a side eye from it.
Yeah. No, the Bengals situation definitely weird and something to keep a tab on as we get further on into this offseason. But another one that I think is interesting is Kirk Cousins. Now, we did get an update on Kirk Cousins today that he's going to be there for mandatory minicamp. And his situation has been kind of under the radar. A lot of the talk when it came to quarterbacks was what's Aaron Rodgers doing? What's Russell Wilson doing? What's going on with the quarterbacks in this draft? How is it all going to play out? Aaron Rodgers was the big topic, but Kirk Cousins always had kind of been this underlying story, this guy that was just there in the background. He had, to put it nicely, a bad season last year, right? It wasn't what he wanted after signing $100+ million guaranteed contract. It's very expensive, but we're past that June 1st deadline. He's already been on the roster long enough to kick up the incentive of an extra $30 million. And his actions, while they're saying he wants a trade, there doesn't seem to be a great situation open for him yet. What do the Falcons do with Kirk Cousins? And is he the kind of guy that you feel comfortable running with as a backup, as a mentor? Obviously, a pretty solid security blanket if Penix doesn't work, but is this the best situation for Kirk Cousins right now?
Honestly, yeah, I think so. I mean, there's obviously, a few teams that still need a quarterback that, could be reliable. And I think Kirk Cousins could still be a starter somewhere. But honestly, he's making a good amount of money for sitting around and basically doing nothing in Atlanta. He basically has to sit around, mentor Penix, make sure he does good. And then, if he gets injured or, misses a game for something, say gets a concussion. Okay, Kirk Cousins, just don't play horrible. Because let's be honest, the Falcons aren't a very, they're not a powerhouse team. This isn't the 2016 Falcons. This isn't, this team that's gonna make the playoff. This isn't. Our Falcons are that good. They're like the Hawks of the NBA. They're gonna be 9-8, or maybe 10-7, and maybe in a weak conference, maybe make the wild card and then lose in the first round, just like the Hawks. But he really doesn't have. He's in a great spot for himself. Mentor, make money, maybe play a game or two, get some snaps here and there. He could be a starter somewhere. I think he's still got it. He's not, I wouldn't say he's crazy old. He's still pretty young. He could definitely, he's no Joe Flacco, but he could definitely be somewhere starting and be like in a Joe Flacco situation. Be starting somewhere, mentor some young guy, and they just build him up. But right now what he's doing in Atlanta is fine. He's just mentoring Michael Penix while he's not starting, helping build up his career. And then if he's needed, he can go in there, get it done. Hopefully, get them wins, but I think he can still do, even in a backup role.
I think one of the more intriguing questions, because I feel like a lot of this is pointing to him just staying in Atlanta this season, is kind of what I expect to happen. But if he were to get traded, what teams are even left for him to go to, right? The Steelers, they brought in Aaron Rodgers. The Browns already have a whole stable in that quarterback room. The Titans are rocking with Cam Ward. It doesn't make sense to put more investment into that quarterback position, at least this offseason. Is there even another team that might be interested in trading for him? Or is it going to be you're stuck in Atlanta, deal with it?
Hey, no, I mean, Cleveland, just toss a 6th-round pick, make it a 5-way quarterback competition. It's just like an old gladiator arena. Just throw all 5 guys into a pit, and that the one that comes out, that's who's going to start in Cleveland. No, but seriously though, I honestly don't see a lot of logical landing spots for Kirk Cousins. I think with that deal right now and some of the other quarterbacking moves we've seen, the Jets at one point in this offseason needed a quarterback. They go get Justin Fields. The Giants go get Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston and Jackson Dart. And then you see Pittsburgh finally get Aaron Rodgers, 4 months after that should have been done. But there's just not a lot of logical landing spots for Kirk Cousins. And ultimately, I think this is a guy that he's not going to sit out the entire season. He's going to be a guy that's going to show up to training camp, do his job. He's under contract. So I think it just makes the most sense for him to be in Atlanta right now, at least for the time being. Maybe there's an injury during training camp that kind of opens up a potential landing spot for him. But I think for right now, it's just time to kind of sit pat for the Falcons and for Kirk Cousins.
Would it be crazy to think, it's kind of random, would it be crazy to think he could go and play in Seattle? I know they just drafted Milroe, but I don't think Sam Darnold's going to do good there. I know he has Cooper Kupp, but I don't think he'll do good there. What if Sam Darnold plays bad, they play Kirk Cousins, and maybe, obviously they drafted Milroe, they want him to play, but what if they don't want to play him yet, let him sit behind someone and grow, and put Kirk Cousins in and let him grow off Kirk Cousins? I mean, that's just I was thinking about that.
How much is it going to cost to get Kirk Cousins? I guess that's the first thing we need to figure out here.
Was he still just contract with the Falcons right now? Is he still $30 million? No way.
4 years, 100.
So he signed that 4-year, $160 million contract earlier last season. Obviously, he has a lot of money pushed towards the end of his deal. It's a lot of dead cap space right now. He just, like I said, kicked that $30 million bonus. His cap hit this year is $40 million. It'll be 57 the year after that, and then 57 as well after that. They do have a potential out after this season, though, which is only going to hit them with $45 million of dead cap instead of 115. So this is probably where they go, but you're looking at taking on a contract like Kirk Cousins. That is a lot of money to take up. And I'm sure you can work out a deal where Atlanta takes some of it. They're going to be hit with $45 million of dead cap either way. But to get him off the books this year, maybe entice some of those older veterans that are still out there. But Seattle is definitely an interesting one because Sam Darnold, I'm not convinced on him over there. I don't know if Jalen Milroe will be ready, but it also just makes it a crowded quarterback room, and you already committed. You paid a lot of money to Sam Darnold this offseason, so I don't know necessarily how realistic that is, but as far as landing points go, it is something that does make a lot of sense if Sam Darnold really doesn't work out.
From a Seahawks fan, I just wanted to say really quick, I think Jalen Milroe is going to be one of those shocking guys. I think the way that he's been talked about in Seattle already, it is just talks about it. This is just practice that we're talking about. He hasn't touched the field. But do not be shocked if Jalen Milroe comes out and just puts on an absolute show, especially with the assets that's going on over there in Seattle. He was already tested as a game manager in Alabama. We did see some slippage with him as having a little bit of a turnover problem. But, I mean, you have a guy like K9 behind Kenneth Walker as your running back. You have Cooper Kupp. You have Jackson Smith and Jigba, who had a great second year last year, looking to make a big improvement this one. There are assets all across this team. So I think just give it some time. I don't think Seattle's the right spot for Kirk Cousins, and I don't think Seattle would drop the money that it would require to pay Kirk Cousins. I think that's what it boils down to. I think the Jets would personally be one of those teams I would look at if Justin Fields starts slipping up. And I wouldn't be shocked if the Falcons moved off of Kirk Cousins early on, just because I think Michael Penix is one of those good backups that could be ready to go for that starting role.
Yeah, I think Penix is ready to go. I love Jalen Milroe. His kind of quarterback builds are my weakness. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. He reminds me of Anthony Richardson a little bit with those skill sets, that Cam Newton, that Josh Allen. Two of those three were good. You never know what's going to happen with guys like that, but I absolutely love Jalen Milroe. I can't wait to see him on the field because he's just such a special athlete out there. I don't know if we're going to have to wait too long because, like I said, I just don't think Sam Darnold's going to be able to handle the pressure behind that Seattle offensive line. But definitely an interesting one to look at. probably Kirk Cousins staying behind. A couple other pieces, some big name defenders. Micah Parsons and TJ Watt are both holding out right now in search of a new contract. They're both probably going to reset the market. If I had to put a number on it, it just depends on who gets there first, who's going to be the highest paid at the end of the day. They're both worth it, right? They're both premier pass rusher linebackers, wherever you want to put them on the field, attacking the passer. I don't understand why these teams don't sign them immediately. It only makes financial sense to sign these guys as quickly as possible. Otherwise, your price tag jumps on you. Look at Myles Garrett's price tag once we saw Max Crosby get signed, right? These guys, their price tag just goes up and up and up. It happened with Brandon Ayuk. It happened so many different times. It happened with the quarterback. Brock Purdy just got paid $55 million, right? These are just numbers that are just going to keep going up as time goes on. Why aren't the Steelers and Cowboys opening up the pocketbook, the checkbook right now to save themselves an extra $2 million a year in the future?
Honestly, I think you're kind of right on. They both want to be the highest paid athlete in the NFL now. You know, Jamar Chase took that reign from Myles Garrett 2 weeks after Myles Garrett signs his extension this offseason. And I could honestly see a situation where Micah Parsons and Jerry Jones said, look, Micah, I'm going to make you the highest paid player in the NFL outside of quarterbacks. We just got to wait out TJ Watt's extension first. Or vice versa, where Micah goes and says, I want to be the highest paid player. I could certainly see that kind of being a situation. And then, too, just some of these deals, it's really kind of intricate when you look at the Cowboys, Dak Prescott's mega deal on their books. The Steelers kind of historically stringent, I guess, on some of their contract extensions, but I think that could be part of a reason. Obviously, I'm just speculating right now. You don't know, though.
I would personally say, I think the biggest issue with these two players, I think the issue is with Pittsburgh right now not paying TJ Watt. I think that is what Micah Parsons is waiting on. He's waiting on TJ Watt to get paid. But the Pittsburgh Steelers, for whatever reason, they're willing to give Aaron Rodgers $20 million for a one-year deal, but they're not able to pay TJ Watt for whatever reason. It makes no sense to me. TJ Watt's been there for almost a decade now. A phenomenal player, one of the best all-time linebackers that's ever played the game, middle linebacker. It's just it makes no sense, but I think that's what the holdout is on. I think Micah Parsons has already looked at Jerry Jones and said, I'm waiting on TJ Watt, make me the highest paid player outside of quarterbacks, and then it's just up to the Steelers, whatever they decide to do.
We were convinced that TJ Watt goes first here, because I think there's a chance it goes the other way, just because I think TJ Watt is more likely to play, or more likely not to hold out, kind of, than Micah Parsons is, right? You get Micah Parsons, he seems like the kind of guy that would just say, hey, I'm not going to play if you don't pay me. And I don't think the Steelers, they don't like to negotiate in season. They're kind of running out the clock right now. It's either going to happen before mandatory minicamp, or it's not going to happen this season, I don't think, at least with TJ Watt. I could see the Cowboys swooping in real late and getting a guy like Micah Parsons extended right before the season starts so that their superstar is happy. And at the long run, again, still cheaper to get the deal done anytime in the future first. But outside of those two, again, just one more big name that I saw holding out, and that's Terry McLaurin. We kind of touched on him a little bit last week. Is the buzz real that he could ask for a trade? Because that never really crossed my mind. It just felt like a contract thing, but I'm hearing some reports that he might ask for a trade if he doesn't get that contract. Washington's not going to let it to get to that point, no?
No, I don't think so. There's no way. I mean, maybe, but if I'm Terry McLaurin, I have every reason to hold out. I really do. He's been there for 2 years now. He's been there since 2018, 2019, whatever, and he's been their best player. I think he's been their best player on the offense and defensive side of the ball. He's been there through pretty bad quarterbacks, And he's putting up consistently 1,000-yard, 900, like high 900,000-yard seasons with pretty bad quarterbacks. This year he gets Jay McDaniels, in my opinion, probably the best performing quarterback in this draft class. And now they don't want to pay him, even though he's by far their most loyal player and their best player. Now they have one good season to think, let's not pay our best player. I think if I'm Terry McLaurin and I'm not getting, at least a 5-year extension, even though he's getting pretty old. I know he's about 30, 29 years old. And even if he doesn't get, 3-year, 4-year extension for a few $1 million, I'm thinking probably like $60 million maybe. I mean, I have every reason to request a trade. I think he should. Not only would he be another wide receiver one wherever he goes. I think, let's say, even if he goes to, let's just say the Seahawks, for example, I think he could take over Cooper Kupp as the wide receiver one there, or Jackson Smith-Njigba, whoever you think it would be. But I mean, he could be a wide receiver one wherever he goes, and the team would also, the Commanders would also get a good amount out of him because he's a good receiver. But I just don't understand why they haven't paid him. He's the best receiver they have. He's overall their best overall player, to ball offense and defensive side of the ball. Not paying him is honestly one of the worst things they could be doing right now. He is, like I said, their most loyal, their best, and just him not being paid this far into the offseason, honestly, was kind of surprising me just because how good he is. He is best receiver by far. He really was. And also on my fantasy team, so I love him. But he was a great player. He really was. Him not getting paid is by far one of the most surprising things to me. Just not sure how he hasn't got paid yet. Just baffling, honestly.
Don't even get me thinking about Terry McLaurin in that Seahawks wide receiver room. Oh my God. That might be the best wide receiver room in football right there. Cooper Kupp, and JSN. Ugh, that's some nasty work right there.
Devious.
He's going to play outside. That's 3 slot receivers,
Terry
man.
can play outside. Terry's a slot receiver.
Yeah,
or not a slot receiver.
You can make it work.
Do you really see Terry asking out, though? I mean, he's been through some really, really dismal seasons for the Washington Commanders. And then now they finally really have a good year. They get to the NFC title game. He's got Deebo Samuel outside of him now. So there's finally another wide receiver not named Terry McLaurin that can catch a pass on the Washington roster. I just don't see a situation where he really wants to ask out. I mean, he's been in Washington for so long at this point, and now it seems like everything's kind of paying off. All the stuff that he had to go through in 7 different quarterbacks and winning 4 games a year, now they're at least on paper a contender. I just don't see a situation where Terry wants to get out after kind of already suffering through to get to this point.
I tend to agree with you there. I don't really. It's another thing that never really crossed my mind until I saw some people talking about it. Just because he's been so loyal in the past, he's taken a little bit of a pay cut to stay in Washington when they were bad. He's someone that is like a captain of that team, someone that is huge in the locker room for them. Very much a vibes guy, which is huge to have when he's one of your best players as well. So you can't really afford to lose him. They'll cave at some point, but negotiation tactics, it's just a big thing. But if he does get traded, we're talking... I mean, I think he's a better player than DK Metcalf, so I think you're looking at a return kind of similar to that. I know he's a little bit older. He's past 30. He'll be 32 in week 1, but still, wide receivers have a little bit of a shelf life nowadays. I think you can probably get a really good haul for him if it just continues to break down, although I can't really see that happening.
I mean, even if he's about to be 32, he would. Okay, last season he was 31 years old. Look what he did. I mean, another 1,000-yard season. Oh, so many touchdowns. I mean, he was just scoring every other. I swear, every time he caught the ball, he was scoring. He was just everywhere. But I mean, yeah, he's just so got it. And a little off topic, we were talking about the Seahawks earlier. Mehrob, how are you a Seahawks fan? You're like a Boston fan. I just saw that really random. How are you a Seahawks fan?
This is a story for another time. We've been doing this. There's no way we have enough time for this story right now.
That threw me off guard because I know you're literally a Celtics fan. You're a Red Sox fan. I'm like, how are you a Seahawks fan? Right? How are you not a fan of Drake May and the Patriots, man? That is the team. Mike Vrabel, dude. Like, come on. How can you not love the Patriots, man?
So that's a story for another show. Something to keep you guys around here. But Not being being a Seahawks fan, growing up in that Boston area with the dynasty, impressive. It's kind of impressive right there. But regardless of that, lots more NFL news coming up as mandatory minicamp and OTAs continue to wrap up. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, hockey is live right now, and it's a little bit more of a pummeling than I was expecting as it goes to Game 3 in Florida. We'll break that down coming up next here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today joined by the full house, Jake, Mehrob, and Nolan are all here on a Monday. If you're just tuning in, we've gone over a lot, but we're about to talk a little bit about some playoff hockey. Currently 4-1 in favor of the Florida Panthers in Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Finals. We'll break down how we got here. A really chippy game, lots of penalties, a couple power play goals coming up in just a second. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with us here on a beautiful Monday, June 9th. But like I was saying, we're going to get here into a little bit of hockey. And this game started off, and the second period really not the way I expected. These two teams have kind of been solid at not drawing penalties, or at least of playing clean hockey the first couple of games, despite playing 3 extra overtime periods in the first 2 games up there in Edmonton. The Panthers jumped out to a pretty quick 2-0 lead before the Oilers answered. It's kind of been their MO. The Panthers get a big lead, but this one feels a little bit different with the way that the game has gone, how physical it has been from both sides, and the amount of penalties that the refs have been calling. Do we see a way that Edmonton comes back from down 3 goals with just over 22 minutes to play?
I mean, if anybody can do it, they can. With the combined powers of Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, anything is possible. I just don't know if we're going to see it tonight. 4-1, you have Florida really playing a solid game across the board. I'm not sure if we're going to see it tonight. I think Florida's probably going to be able to close this one out.
Yeah, no, Florida's been, I mean, that's been what they've done. They've been really good in the first 2 periods of each of these games. Obviously, game 2 ends in favor of Florida in that double overtime, but to even get it to overtime, a Corey Perry goal with just 18 seconds remaining, it's just more magic, right? But eventually that magic has to run out. You can't consistently do this and expect to win a lot of hockey games, especially deep into the NHL playoffs like this. But Stuart Skinner was standing on his head. He hasn't necessarily been bad in this game, but he hasn't been as good as he was back home. Panthers take a 2-1 lead here. This series has been so back and forth that I'm not ready to say that this game 3 feels like a must-win for anybody, but it hurts that Edmonton Oilers chance a lot. Does this feel like a must-win to any of you guys?
I mean, it feels a little bit of a must-win from Florida. They go down 1-0. They go out down 1-0 after losing game 1. They come out, win game 2. Brad Marchand being the hero of that one. It feels like they just needed to make a statement. Edmonton sent a message in game 1, solidifying that win. Florida needed to send something back. They split in Edmonton. I'm expecting this series to be split in Florida as well, going into game 5 as a 2-2 series. I also necessarily wouldn't say this game is over yet, because this is an Edmonton team that already has 7 comeback wins already this postseason. So this is a team that knows how to come back from deficits. They've done it time and time again, using Leon Draisaitl, using Connor McDavid. This is a team that can come back. So I wouldn't say they're done yet, but Stuart Skinner is definitely one of those guys that when he starts flat, this team gets in a hole pretty quickly, and it's hard to dig themselves out of it.
Yeah, they fall into that trap too often. It's good that you can, and we talk about this with the Pacers. It's good that you can come back and win these games. It shows that your ability as a team to deal with hardships, but it's not good that it happens every single time with you. And that's the big concern with them. Goaltending, of course, the big concern. But they've got the offense to keep up. They've got the offense to do it. The amount of penalties, though. I mean, you go back and you look at the other games in this series. Right now, both of these teams have 4 penalties total. In that double overtime game, you had basically double the amount of penalties, but that is in 2 extra periods here, right? Both of these teams' penalty kills, and specifically, have been very impressive. It's just this game, with so many in the first period, it feels like that took a little bit of the wind, the comeback out of the sail, especially with how good that penalty kill has been for the Florida Panthers tonight. But we have a lot of hockey to go still about a period to go, especially if the Oilers can get one quick down the stretch. They're getting some pressure right now on Sergei Bobrovsky and the Panthers. That offense can go any way, any day of the week. But we're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we finish up our show talking about the fights, the UFC fights from this weekend. That'll be next here on the GSMC Sports Podcast. Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus, today joined by all three of the boys, Mehrob, Jake, and Nolan here with me. We're going to finish up our show here today talking about some of the big fights from this weekend, especially in the UFC. We saw some pretty huge results in those championship rounds. We'll talk about that in a second. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday, June 9th. But like I was saying, we're going to get into these big fights. Mehrob, talk to me about all the results this weekend, some huge ones. The championship belt, of course, stays in Mehrob's hand. Talk to me a little bit about those fights and what happened overall in the UFC.
Well, I won't lie, Jeremy. I did not hop in a UFC octagon, and I'm not the UFC Bantamweight Championship. So let's start with that. This guy may have the similar name as me, but not me. Mehrob Fatemi is obviously an unbelievable guy. Won the title from Sugar Sean O'Malley back in September of last year at UFC 300. Comes out last night in the rematch, and not only did he face a better Sugar Sean O'Malley than he did on September 20th last year, he finished. He didn't win by decision. He didn't win by just sitting there and taking him down time and time again. Mehrob sat there. Not only he took him down a couple times and ended up getting submission, but he was throwing hands with Sugar Sean O'Malley in a way that obviously Sean O'Malley is the striker, and we know he's the gifted striker as he is. That's his strong suit. But for Mehrob to stand there and go toe-to-toe with him, landing shots, his right hand was landing all night long. And to couple that along with his takedown offense, Sean O'Malley was prepped for it, did the best that he could, but Mehrob is just his cardio, his ability, his strength, his brute strength, able to take you down, his submission abilities across the board, putting him in that Darce choke to end the fight. It's just all the qualities of a great champion, and this already puts him in the conversation for one of the greatest bantamweights, I would say, that in the history of the UFC. From there, we got to also talk about the co-main event. We saw Kayla Harrison take down Juliana Pena, which was definitely much more of a dominant performance from Kayla Harrison than, for example, the main event. But Kayla Harrison obviously been around the UFC for the last 2 years or so, undefeated since joining, and this now sets up a fight between her and Amanda Nunes, who the eve before Saturday, when these two women fought, Amanda Nunes coming out and saying that she was ready to unretire and that she was unretiring to face the winner of this fight. Did she know that Kayla Harrison was ready to win this? We don't know that, but Kayla Harrison, now this is going to be the super fight of the women's division, and I cannot wait to see it. The Lioness going up against the new baddest woman on the planet in Kayla Harrison. It is going to be a phenomenal fight, and I cannot wait to see it.
You talked about that main event fight, those co-main event fights. The fact that Mehrob he's just got a strong jaw on him. I mean, that's some serious power that Sean O'Malley packs behind his punch there. He's got very, very strong jaw there. Again, sit there and take it, like you were saying. It's very impressive. It's kind of the fight that I thought, with the way that Sean O'Malley had looked down in his last couple of fights since losing that title, I thought he would be unbeatable. Really, I was very impressed by what Mehrob was able to do on Saturday over the weekend. But what did you guys think of those fights there? Were you guys watching it? What did you think of each of the co-main and the main events?
Yeah, I mean, Sean O'Malley was super prepared for this fight. Like Mehrob said earlier, this was a Sean O'Malley that was focused, determined, and looked solid in the first round, able to kind of fend off Mehrob's takedown attempts, 6 of 8 successfully defended, but that relentlessness just continued to keep going, and it wore Sean O'Malley down to the point where there was no winning for Sean O'Malley past probably the second round. It was just that kind of dominance that we saw, and then dominance was a theme with Kayla Harrison too. That was an absolute just show-out performance from Kayla Harrison. Juliana Pena never really honestly having a chance in that fight, I thought. But 2 great performances and 2 fighters that it's going to be exciting to see what they do next.
Yeah, I mean, my going into that Saturday night, I was like, Sean O'Malley, I think, lost his first time. He's going back for revenge. I really thought that he was going to go in there and he was going to reclaim his title. I really thought that. He's a completely new person. He was a lot more locked in, a lot more serious. He changed his whole appearance. He goes from his goofy comedic style to Mr. Serious, Mr. Tommy Tough Knuckles, and it just didn't work out. It really didn't. First round was a good round. The first round out of the 3 was the best. Second round, Mehrob, he kind of just. I mean, he was holding him down. He was pinned down most of that second round. And third round, honestly, him tapping out was the most disappointing thing I think I could have saw. If you're fighting for a title, you cannot tap out. You need to stick in there and try to fight your best until you literally cannot move and your brain just goes black. I'm being serious. If you're fighting for a title, you cannot tap out. You're fighting for something that, in my opinion, means you're doing it for. You're fighting for something you've trained your entire life for, and I feel like tapping out is something that just, I don't know. I was just really mad that he tapped out. I really thought he was going to win that fight. I'm not even a big Sean O'Malley fan. I just want him to win that fight. And seeing him lose, tap out, I was like, really, bro? Like, I was just not happy. But overall, I thought it was, he can still come back for this. Only has 4 losses in his whole career, 3 losses in his whole career, and 2 of them to Mehrob. I mean, if he goes for a third, I think probably maybe a different outcome. Doubt it, but would be cool to see. I didn't really watch any of the pre-events though, any of the co-events. So I didn't really. That was the only fight I really watched. So I can't really say much in the other ones. But hearing a girl come out of retirement, I think possibly leading to a new title fight. That'd be pretty cool. I don't really know much about it, but I could definitely look into it, see what that would be about. But coming out of retirement and possibly fighting the new champion. I mean, that'd be pretty cool. I would definitely watch that for sure.
No mercy out of Nolan over here is what we're getting. But thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in to today's episode of the GSMC Sports Podcast. We will be back tomorrow talking all the biggest news from around the world of sports. Can't wait to see you then. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn ain't that